We'd like to start by inviting you all to look at some dots. We're not going to claim that we've discovered the most boring constellation there is in the universe, and this isn't some crazy vision test. What I want you to do is look at these dots and ask yourself which one of the dots is most interesting. What about now? The thing is that when we see something that defies a pattern or that surprises us, it makes us curious. Now think about where you work. You're surrounded by these white dots. Processes, routines, procedure, organizational culture, even the standardized forms we have to fill out every single day, they all suggest a pattern. And as a result, it provides us an opportunity to see surprises, to see the unexpected. In fact, organizations should be places where we can all be curious. Instead, most of us live a reality where we're not, where organizations are reinforcing the monotony of the stable dots.
Our data show that organizations and society more broadly stifle curiosity. We're here today to show you how organizations can do better and how you can too by rekindling your own curiosity. Curiosity is a superpower we're all born with. It got us crawling, then walking, then running. Collectively, it's what pushed us to learn how to fly, to touch the moon. We're here today to talk about how to recultivate this innately human characteristic. I'm Jon Cohen. I'm the Chief Research Officer at SurveyMonkey. I ask questions for a living. In many ways, curiosity is my profession.
And I'm Spencer Harrison. I'm a business professor at INSEAD, and my research looks at the power of curiosity inside organizations. Jon and I were introduced because we found that we were both interested in learning more about curiosity. And as we began talking with each other, we realized that there were two questions that we were extremely curious about. The first is, does curiosity matter for business? And the second was, what happens in situations that get people really, really curious? Today, we're going to share the results of a study that we've done over the last year to understand the answers to these questions. And our goal is to elevate the value of curiosity to where it should be.
Reality is we live in a time where the machines are getting smarter every day. They can do more math, and they can certainly outwork us. But we have one massive advantage that they don't have. It's our curiosity. For young children, it's effortless to tap into this curiosity. Research shows that on average, 4-year-olds ask about 300 questions each and every day. They're curious about everything and completely unafraid to ask why. My own children play a why game, effectively a never-ending string of whys. Why? 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 Occasionally they intersperse a how, a what, or a where, but it's mostly whys. A recent episode of this started innocently enough with, why can't I watch more Netflix? And ended uncomfortably for me, how am I part daddy? Well, the question asking that comes so easily to 4-year-olds disappears as children go through the school system. By middle school, the number of questions in a day drops to nearly 0. And by high school, all of those interesting, exploratory, sometimes provocative questions that a 4-year-old might ask become, can I use the bathroom? And will this be on the test?
So while we're all born curious, our curiosity is beaten out of us by the systems that socialize us, by school and by work. In fact, as we grow older, we learn two important rules about curiosity. The first is that we should limit our curiosity to practical concerns. And the second, and more fundamental, is that it's not our job to wonder or explore. In fact, it's our job to find out what people in power, our parents, our teachers, our managers, want from us, and to find that. And as we spend time doing that, we leave the question asking to them, which further limits our ability to learn and explore. It becomes even more pernicious, though, because the people in power often ask us questions that they already know the answers to. For example, if I ask my kids, have you washed your hands? And I know they haven't, that question is not going to provoke curiosity about the importance of hygiene. Now, our research shows that really curious people actually ask different types of questions. So in one study that I did with t-shirt designers, we looked at the sort of questions that highly curious t-shirt designers ask. And what we found is they asked really broad, open-ended questions. Questions like, what do you think about this design? Or where do you think I could take this idea? By asking these broad questions, it invited more people into the conversation and allowed their designs to improve. In contrast, the people that were lower in curiosity, they asked more pragmatic procedural questions, and their designs didn't improve. So this raises the question, what enables somebody to stay curious, especially in the face of these socializing agents that we've talked about that seem to strip our curiosity away from us? Well, we read the autobiographies of eminent creators, like Nobel Prize winners, to find an answer to this question. And what we found is that for many of these people, they describe a moment, often early on, where somebody authorized their curiosity and it became a part of their identity. So in the face of adults saying, stop pestering me with those questions, or it's not appropriate to be curious right now, these people were able to continue being curious and ask questions and explore the world. So for example, Orville Wright said that their parents encouraged them to investigate anything that aroused their curiosity. So in that case, you can see how parents can authorize curiosity and make it part of our identity. But organizations can do the same thing. Mae Jemison, she was the first female African-American astronaut. She described being extremely curious as a child. And she said her curiosity didn't lose its energy in part because of an internship she had at Bell Labs. She said that's the power that organizations and companies have. They can authorize curiosity and make it part of our identity.
So if organizations can authorize curiosity, a core question is, do they? Another question is, what's the linkage at the individual level between curiosity and professional growth? These and other questions we tried to answer through a series of surveys. We conducted 7 surveys in 5 countries with more than 23,000 people, including more than 1,500 top executives. And here are some of what we found. First, curiosity is a core building block for professional growth. In the surveys, people who see themselves as curious report regularly looking for ways to get ahead. When you think of some of the more popular approaches to understand the psychology of achievement, from the growth mindset to radical candor, where do they start? With inquisitiveness, with asking hard questions. Curious people have hard conversations when things aren't going well, with a project, with the team, or even with the talk. They ask direct questions of themselves and those around them. They're interested in continually learning from those experiences so they can improve their relationships and their careers. But we wanted not just to focus on the workplaces of today. After all, experts across a wide variety of fields tell us that the way we work today is rapidly being transformed by artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of anxiety out there about this. In our survey, the vast majority of us see AI as taking away more jobs than it creates over the coming decade. Will it take away my job? Will it take away yours? AI is a sword of Damocles dangled above all of us. Curiosity is a shield. Most of us see human curiosity as giving us a perpetual edge over the machines. The machines, after all, never ask why. Whether it's about the workplace of today or the workplace of tomorrow, we're focusing on organizations so much today for 2 primary reasons. First, that's where many of us spend the bulk of our time. And second, although the way organizations are structured today inhibit our experience of curiosity, we can change that. So Spencer will talk about that.
And before we talk about the ways that we can change it, we want to really focus in on these barriers. And first, it starts with really bad news. So all of the people that we studied, less than half of them saw society at large as valuing curiosity, no matter what their job title or role was. But it gets even worse. Only 5% of the people that we studied saw curiosity as the most important trait for organizations to prepare for the future. Instead, we valued things like communication, commitment, or professionalism higher in our system of professional values than curiosity. The problem is that many of these characteristics reinforce the status quo, the stable white dots.
We also found extraordinary gaps between the way top executives and those who work for them think about curiosity, whether they see their workplaces as encouraging curiosity, whether they see a linkage between curiosity and earning, and they also have very different experiences when it comes to asking questions in the workplace. Every day, an overwhelming majority of top executives show up thinking that their workplaces encourage curiosity. That's wonderful for them. The challenge is most people who work for them are far less apt to see that same connection. The same thing goes for compensation. About half of top executives see one's curiosity directly linked to earnings. Very few people who work for them see this connection. This matters a lot. If companies aren't incentivizing and encouraging curiosity, it makes it much less likely that people are going to show it at work. If question asking is risky sometimes. If there's no reward, if there's no perceived reward, why take the risk? This is how innovation, and not just power, get concentrated at the top of organizations. The people in charge feel that they can ask whatever question they need. People lower down are disempowered. There's a direct connection here to engagement. The word curiosity derives in part from the Latin to care. Not caring can show up as not asking. We want to look at what some of the barriers are to asking questions in the workplace. One of the more frequently mentioned is that when you ask questions, you don't get real answers. And this one shows up in particular among millennial workers. Another big one, a fear of looking stupid. Think of a recent meeting you might have been in. Did you have a question you didn't ask? Maybe more than one. What stopped you? Did you think people wouldn't genuinely engage? Did you think you might be judged for asking? Again, curiosity can be an antidote here. In our surveys, people who find themselves curious at work find themselves generating more new ideas and sharing them more frequently with their colleagues.
So to better understand how to make this happen, we looked into daily moments when individuals are willing to share and generate new ideas. And what that revealed was the immense power of situations to catalyze our curiosity. My high school physics teacher, Mr. Jackson, intuitively understood this principle. He usually began a class by blowing something up in the room and then asking us to figure out what had happened. And by making us surprised and then curious, for me, it's created a lifelong love of physics. So to understand what's going on here, I've developed and tested a framework that I call the 4 I's. The 4 I's provide a social architecture to understand how to engineer situations that can make us and the people around us more curious. The first I is identity. Now, we've already talked about identity a little bit tonight by talking about Nobel Prize winners and eminent creators and how many of them have this moment early on where they feel like curiosity becomes an authorized part of their identity. You might be thinking, Spencer, I'm not a curious person. Or nobody ever sat me down and said, no matter what, stay curious. But the reality is that our identities are multifaceted. You might be one thing at work, and then when you go home, you could be a parent, a pet lover, an athlete, a hobbyist. And if you look across these identities, I guarantee that in one of them you'll find you're constantly reading. You're looking for new data, new ideas. You're connecting with new people. That means you're curious in that identity. And if we find that we're curious in one identity, we can use that to transfer and self-authorize our other identities. The second I is incentives. So in organizations, we're usually paid for performance, for executing on tasks that are already identified for us. But imagine you show up to a performance review in the future, and your manager sits you down and they say, tell me what surprises you found this year. Or even, tell us something that we think is normal around here, but we should be really seeing as abnormal or unusual. By incentivizing curiosity, organizations open up new opportunities. For example, we think about hotels as places that rent rooms. That's normal. But hotels have actually begun selling mattresses, furniture, wall art. By allowing their employees to be curious, it's opened up new opportunities. The third I is iteration. I was an early backer of a company on Kickstarter called Wonder Workshop. They make fabulous robots that teach children how to physicalize the intuition behind coding. In one of their early prototypes, they realized that there was a hidden gender effect that made it so that boys would want to play with the robot, but girls wouldn't. But they weren't satisfied with their answer. They kept iterating, and this is what curious people do. So they kept designing robots until they found one that both girls and boys were equally excited about. The final I is intersections. Curiosity thrives where multiple interests and ideas can commingle. Think about Florence during the Renaissance, the Parisian cafe of the 19th century, or even Silicon Valley today. But the issue is that most of us feel more and more disconnected in spite of all the gadgets that we have that allow us to connect. And this feeling is even more pronounced at work. This makes it even more important for organizations to create these intersections where people can feel curious. One of the ways to do that is to create a sense of childlike safety, where you know that you can be surrounded by people that are going to encourage you to explore beyond your current interests. Instead, what we find is that very often people find their own tribe. They find echo chambers where people are promoting them to keep thinking the things that they're already thinking. And this instead is a childish safety that's actually disempowering us from being more curious.
People in power are already tapping into their curiosity. Research shows that people who lead organizations read more than the people who work for them. They do more to cross boundaries, those important intersections that Spencer mentioned. They have more friends and colleagues across industries. There are other examples that come out as well. Mark Cuban refers often back to the time when he stayed up really late as a child. Mark Cuban from Shark Tank fame and others. Stayed up really late at night reading about stamps just to gain an edge for trading Pokemon cards. I will say in preparing for this talk, I thought I should be a little more encouraging with my son's Pokemon focus, but we'll see. Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, talks often about how curiosity keeps propelling him forward. He talks in particular about reading and reading academic and profound books to keep him focused and improving the world. Bill Gates, Mark Cuban, the Nobel laureates that Spencer mentioned earlier, leaders across organizations have already incorporated curiosity as part of their identities, and we can all do the same thing.
So we mentioned early on that artificial intelligence is becoming an ever more powerful part of our society and our organizations. But we've noted that curiosity is a superpower that we all have that can set us apart. Now, we've mentioned some of the severe challenges that we face in trying to be curious today. But what's important is that these gaps in where curiosity is and where it could be are also huge opportunities. Individually, as we embrace curiosity, it allows us ample opportunity for our careers to advance and for us to grow. Perhaps more exciting is the opportunities it allows for us collectively, because curiosity can be the source for connecting with new people and solving even more complex problems. And that's actually the next frontier in the research on curiosity, is to figure out how leaders and organizations can't just spike a moment of curiosity, but can create cultures where it's sustained and where it can thrive.
Spencer mentioned at the outset that it was academic research questions about curiosity that brought us together. That was more than a year ago. But today, on this stage, is the first time we're meeting in person. So very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, John.
That's the wonderful thing about curiosity. What are you curious about? What would you ask someone sitting around you tonight? What are the green dots in your life?
This is Jon Cohen, and I'm Spencer Harrison, and ask away.